No.
Okay. So welcome to our Planning and Parks Committee meeting for August. And Gary, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Bartoni, Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano, and Chair McCutcheon.
Here. Has anybody got any additions or deletions to the minutes? Do I hear a motion for approval?
I will.
Rob and Katie?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
pardon my interruption, but Dr. Rambo had identified error in the acreage of the Portner Park item, and we had it as 22, and I believe it's 27 acres. So we've made that correction already, but just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes. Kathy, do we have any public input participants? No?
No, ma'am, there's no one on the call.
Okay. Under our first action item under planning matters is commercial vehicle definition and traffic code regulations. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, welcome. We appreciate you all being here tonight. The first item on tonight's agenda relating to planning matters is the commercial vehicle definition and as it relates to the traffic code and how it treats commercial vehicles in residential areas. At the June meeting, we spent a great deal of time going over information that had been prepared by the Department of Planning. And with that information, the Department of Planning provided what it believed might be a good approach in terms of a consistent definition, both for the zoning ordinance and the traffic code. That definition was presented to the committee members, and a key component of it was making determinations of commercial vehicles by weight more so than any other characteristic. And that weight limit for a commercial vehicle in the NU non-urban resident district and all our districts in the city of Wildwood would be 10,500 pounds. There was some logic to that number, 10,500 pounds. That number was not consistent with the traffic code's definition, which used 12,000 pounds, as well as how the Department of Motor Vehicles with the state of Missouri has 12,000 pounds as one of its components as well. That issue, along with a couple of others, led the committee to request some additional research on the part of the Department of Planning. And those 4 research items are identified on page 6 of the memorandum prepared on this matter for the committee members tonight. The first of those is the conversion or modification of trucks, which oftentimes actually make them heavier than lighter and changes the weight as the manufacturer has it identified. The second was a request for different types of photographs of these vehicles. What does weigh 1,000 pounds? What weighs 5,000 pounds, etc. And then seeking some direction on that conflict between the weights or the discontinuity between the two, so to speak, 10,500 versus 12,000 pounds. And then finally, are we restricting the placement of commercial vehicles on public streets, or are we restricting it on driveways? Are we allowing both or some combination? And so those are the items the Department of Planning focused on. And through its research, the department does believe that the conversion of vehicles almost entirely increases their weight. They may remove a traditional truck bed, part of a pickup truck, and add something other to accommodate an enclosure that can handle equipment, tools, etc. And from that perspective, we still feel that for most purposes in a residential area, we want to ensure that we're dealing more with stock vehicles, not those modified, which again lends itself to the use of a weight limit, a standard weight limit based upon an easy and readily available source, such as Ford Motor Company, Chevrolet, and Dodge Ram. All of those publish the weights of their pickup trucks and other vehicles. As part of the research, there are a number of attachments to the memorandum. And I think they're pretty interesting attachments in the fact that they kind of give you every range of type of truck or commercial vehicle. And it also breaks it down into 8 classes. Class 1 being the lightest to Class 8 being the largest and heaviest of commercial vehicles. I think it's interesting when you look at that information, all of them, the break-off point, so to speak, in between, I believe, Class 4 and Class 5 is 10,000 pounds or 10,001 pound. So again, I think we're on the right track using what's available from the manufacturers, as well as what the Federal Highway and Safety Administration identifies as the classes and their associated weights. So 2 and 3 are kind of addressed simultaneously by the attachments that were provided. And then finally, the intent is to, with the regulations as revised, both the zoning definition of commercial vehicles and the traffic code and how it addresses commercial vehicles, is to try to have the vehicles placed on private property, not on a public street. And the reason being for that is primarily public safety, just from the standpoint that a lot of the older streets are wider. They're generally 26 foot in width. That was the St. Louis County Department of Transportation standard. But many of the Wildwood streets of late have been narrower. At the time the city incorporated, and for many, many years, there was a prevailing thought that narrower streets were safer streets because they managed speeds better than wider streets. The inclination on a wider street is to go faster. On a narrower street, it's to go slower. Also, we do allow parking of personal vehicles on the street at all hours of the day. And as many of you know, if you live in a subdivision, as your children age and become teenagers, there's a lot more cars around. So it's almost like we're trying to reserve the street spaces for the personal vehicles versus those commercial types. So saying all of that, the definition that was provided to you in June is the definition that the department is presenting again tonight. And the rationale again is based upon our research, that 10,500 pound limit seems to be a good limit. It is supported by the manufacturers of trucks, commercial vehicles. It's consistent with the 8 classes that is managed by the Federal Highway and Safety Administration. And I think we should move into allowing commercial vehicles in residential settings slowly, not fast, which to me requires us to first try to get them on private property, not on the public street. And then if we don't have issues, we certainly can always return and look at it from that perspective. Madam Chair, that's my short, hopefully, and brief presentation. It's really more about hearing what you all think as we stand here today with the additional research. So thank you.
I see Teresa made it. She was trying to log on, but I texted her the password. So looks like she's gotten on. Joe? No, that's your background. Sorry about that. Katie?
I do have comments. So
I've got you on the list.
Okay,
Katie,
so I go first. Okay. Joe, I really appreciate you defining those 2 different categories that would fit in that. And I think it's important that we do allow individuals to be able to park those types of vehicles in their driveway or in their garage if they fit into their garage effectively. with the step van class, the utility van class, and the full-size pickup truck class. I think that handles most anybody who is working unless they have, as you said, additional equipment on their modified truck. So I'll make a motion that we approve this as stated, and that we, I guess we have to bring it towards council for a final vote.
Yes,
Do I
ma'am.
hear a second? No second?
I will
Rob-
second that. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay, and you wanted to make a comment, Rob?
Well, I did, but I think it's already been covered. So I actually really had a question about the weights, but then I found it on my other pad. So
Okay,
we're good.
Teresa?
Yes, I had a maybe a kind of lengthy comment. I apologize, I'm a little scatterbrained tonight, and it took me a while to get logged on, but I've been preparing for my husband's having cancer surgery on Thursday, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to prepare. But I did want to bring up, after looking at all of those documents that were attached, I found it a little confusing and a little bit deceiving, maybe from just the reading, not that anyone's trying to deceive, but the reading of those documents. If you don't talk automotive, the only attachment that I would have referred to as an official, officially giving us any information would be the one from the FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration. And it would be really helpful maybe in the future if we have sources listed for each thing that we, the documents that we have, so we could kind of do some research on those. I think that there are some terms that would be really helpful for all of us to understand if when we're making our opinion about this. The first one would be the curb weight. The curb weight is listed on all those Ford vehicles in that document. The curb weight is just the weight of the basic model vehicle that comes off the end of the line with no additions to it. The payload is the weight of the rest of the things that go in, the add-ons, from the manufacturer, the passengers, and that's averaged at 160 pounds per person. And let's see what else is in that, just what the vehicle can carry. So the curb weight plus the payload is called the gross vehicle weight, and you'll see that on some of the documents, but the one with the Ford only has the curb weight. The gross vehicle weight is going to be more than the curb weight. The tow weight is how much it can pull behind it. So if you add the gross vehicle weight plus the tow weight, that's going to be your gross combined vehicle weight. So if we look at just the gross vehicle weight, well, and the gross vehicle weight, that's the maximum is determined. So if you have a heavier, if you decide you're going to put in a diesel engine instead of a gasoline engine, for example, it's going to be heavier, then the load that it's going to be able to carry safely is going to decrease. So that gross vehicle weight is going to stay the same. But, and of course, I'm most familiar with the Fiat Chrysler family because that's where I retired from. But, and so I can give you an example of like the largest 3500 Dodge Ram truck. The curb weight of that would be 6,300 pounds. The regular cab, the GVW, as it's called, would be 10,700 pounds. And a mega cab GVW would be 11,400 pounds. And the gross combined vehicle weight, that was what we talked about, the tow weight plus the gross vehicle weight, would be 21,500 pounds. So this is a quite popular vehicle for commercial use and for just individual use. So that would make that vehicle plus any of its competitors at that weight not be allowed. And so my recommendation would be to, well, first just make a simple matrix that lists all the largest vehicles from the top manufacturer, the automobile manufacturers, with their curb weight, their GVW, their GCVW, as well as maybe even their dimensions, their length, width, and height, because I think that our residents are concerned with that also, the way it, the size, the way it looks, as well as the weight. And I would furthermore suggest that we stick to the 12,000 pound maximum limit.
Any other comments? So,
Yeah,
Jody
I've
had
been
a-
waiting to speak. I'm not sure if you're able to see. I have the hand raise button on the participant chat.
sorry.
Actually,
I was not paying attention to that. And you've got raised hands behind you, so it was a
yeah,
little
I do that in case you missed the hand raise.
Oh,
We got hands all over.
now I know. Now I know.
All right. So I do have some comments about this because I'm living through this right now with a neighborhood and several residents that are in that neighborhood that are upset with the number of commercial vehicles that have proliferated around their street there over the years. And the number of commercial vehicles and also the types of vehicles that are there. It looks like we're getting into bigger and larger vehicles, more of these wrapping type advertisements on these vehicles that really detract from the residential quality of life that people come to expect when they move into an area around here. And so what I hear, and I just had a conversation just today with the resident there, but it's been going on, is that what is the city going to do about this? And so I wonder, I'm going to throw this out there just to kind of see what your thoughts are around this, because you may have looked into this, but does the 10,500 go far enough to address it? My concern, or the question I have, is that we pass something like this, and then the answer is that the city still can't do anything about it because we have, if I'm reading this correctly, any vehicle with a gross vehicular weight of under 10,500 would be allowed. Now, Teresa makes up a very good point. It's helpful to associate what are the vehicles with these gross weights here. And from what I could see here, and Joe, in your document, I hope maybe you can pull this up on the screen, but from what I see on the document, it is page 8. Is that possible? Could someone pull that up on the screen and share it here? Because we could see a lot of these vehicles here, and I'm going to assume, all right, so Teresa, you mentioned curb weight, so maybe there is a little bit of clarity that needs to be provided here, because we're talking about gross vehicle weight, if I understand it correctly. So perhaps slide or page 8 of the document may not really apply to us because it's at a different type of weight there. Right. I mean, let's pull it up there. Thank you for doing that. Who, by the way, has pulled this up so I can refer to you? Kathy, thank you. So maybe I should. My question is, do we need to pay attention to this page, given that these are different weight types? Does anybody have the answer?
Well, Mr. Garitano, I'm sure Ms. Clark could answer it, but the curb weight is the lesser of the two weights. And so, as you'll see, the Ford Motor Company has a large pickup truck that has approximately, at curb weight, 10,500 pounds. So certainly the department's perspective, and it may be a wrong perspective, and certainly I'll accept that criticism, but when we go on an enforcement call because someone has a commercial vehicle parked in their driveway or on a street, I'm not really too concerned if it has a bunch of rock in the back or if there's 6 people sitting inside of it. I really just want to know, based upon the gross vehicular weight, which I'll assume is with the payload full in the back of the truck and the passengers in it, even if they're not there, is the standard we'll use. I appreciate the matrix and the suggestion, but the more complicated we make things, the more difficult it is to make determinations in the field. And then it also has to go to the prosecuting attorney and the municipal judge, and they have to try to make sense out of what we've created as ordinance and what we've issued as a violation notice and the summons that's been written. So I took the heavier of the two, curb weight versus gross vehicular weight, made the assumption that we know that people can ride in it. We know it can haul things. We don't necessarily want to argue with somebody if there's 2 people in it or 4 people in it, or if it's half full or half empty. Really what we're looking at is a standard here that, for the most part, all of the motor vehicle companies and the Federal Highway Administration accept for around 10,000 pounds. We gave 10,500 pounds to give us a leeway.
Did we lose somebody? Joe, did we lose you?
Yeah, Joe is frozen.
Seems so.
You really should think about this. I know people drive commercial vehicles home. I know people like to have that option, but if there's one thing that can change the character of a residential setting, this might be it.
So, Joe, if I could, and hopefully folks would allow me to ask just some follow-up questions. Based on the proposed changes, then are those vehicles that were up on the page there, they're all showing like about 4,000 pounds. Would they be allowed because they're under the 10,500?
Yes, sir. We're making the restrictions, we're making the regulations less restrictive.
That's okay. So that answers a question there. So as we look at those pages there, I'm assuming you all have it, page 8, page 9. These are all vehicles that are in the 4,000 to 5,000 pound range, and even into page 10, these are all vehicles that are under the 10,500 pound range. So from what I could tell here, the only vehicle in these examples here where we would have any kind of ability to enforce the law, proposed law, is on page 11, and that would be the heaviest Silverado 3500 HD, which is at 13,025 pounds, if I read this correctly. Every other vehicle in this list here, some of these are quite large trucks, these Silverado. They seem to give the impression we're going to be left with no ability to address it. And my biggest concern, and I know we have good responsible citizens, and in some situations their home sites probably may have more flexibility to allow maybe storage of a vehicle like that in a driveway, especially I guess if you have a long driveway it wraps around the back of a house. But in Ward 8 and maybe in some of the other wards too, we've got a lot of homes that are on a street where the driveways are right in the front, garages in the front. And so when you're standing on the sidewalk there, you may see 4 or 5 houses with trucks in them. And then the commercial stickers, the full body wrap. There's also some commercial vehicles that kind of blend in nicely. Maybe they don't have a full commercial sticker all over it. Maybe it's just a name of a company. Look, example, the Wildwood City trucks. They just have on the door Wildwood. That's it. So I wonder if we're ready to move forward with this yet, or if we need to continue to debate and discuss how we can make sure that we try to maintain the quality of life in the neighborhood. Certainly the people that have been contacting me, but at the same time, I do want to make sure we have a balance that, for those people, maybe those smaller little vehicles, that little truck that just has a company name on the side, uh, it may be allowed in that case because it's not a huge distraction from it. It's no different than if someone had a personal truck uh, with no name on it in that case. So but those are my comments there. I really am curious to hear what you all think about it.
So I'm going to make a comment, kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Garantano just said. I know a lot of individuals that have contacted me are concerned more about the wrapped vehicles, the ones that the logos are whatever it might be is on the truck that definitely shows that it's a commercial truck or commercial vehicle. And that's what I hear a lot of complaints about. The other thing I hear complaints about are that the larger vehicles that are in people's driveway then go out and obstruct the sidewalk. And then when you limit that to 10,500, I believe there are some individuals who do not use the trucks for commercial, but have the four-wheel drive Silverados, which would then go over the weight of 10,500. So if we have an individual, according to this proposal, who had a personal truck, a personal, say, Silverado four-wheel drive, how would this ordinance, should it go forth, pertain to a personal vehicle?
No, and there's also another component to all of this. Well, before we write a warning notice on a commercial vehicle, we also check with the Missouri Department of Motor Vehicles to see how it's registered. So oftentimes pickup trucks now are registered as personal vehicles, not commercial vehicles. Gary Cruz, who used to be the captain of the precinct, could probably give you a better understanding of those components than I, given his experience over 37 years as a police officer.
Gary, do you want to weigh in?
Well, I've been away for quite some time, but people license vehicles according to the cost of licensing. So they could license, my pickup truck at home is licensed as a motor vehicle, a regular motor vehicle, which a lot of people do that. And you can do it if your vehicle's under a certain weight, but the problem lies in the vehicle can handle a lot more weight, and it actually could be considered a commercial vehicle, but it's licensed as a regular vehicle. So when the police show up, they run the plate and it won't come back as a commercial vehicle, even though everybody standing around realizes that it probably is. I know that's confusing, but that's what they have to deal with on a daily basis.
Teresa?
I think Katie was before me.
Katie?
I guess my question is, I understand the need for reducing the amount of commercial stickerage and or whatever you want to call it, paint jobs, etc., on things. I wish we could tell people as part of this ordinance that they have to park those types of vehicles in their garage to be less obstructive to others, but because they have longer lengths now, that's not always possible. So I'm grasping at straws and trying to understand how are we going to be able to police that activity, and should information or requests be put before the subdivision covenants as the first way to deal with those issues, since that's the neighborhood and the individuals that are concerned about the particular trucks, and they can work with that versus having city staff have to argue, well, this particular truck, because there's only names on one or two doors, looks okay, but this one that has a wrap around it that's both green, orange, and blue is considered offensive. I don't want us to get into that kind of policing as a city. That, from my perspective, needs to be something that two neighbors talk about, quite honestly, if it's really bothering them.
Teresa?
Yes, I agree with Katie. It's and Joe about the, we don't want to get so complicated with all of the details. That's why I was suggesting a simpler matrix that shows only the weights. The first few pages, the 8, not 7, 8, 9, whatever it was, 8, 9, and 10, that have the Ford pickups listed, those are curb weights, and those weights, that number really means nothing to me, comparing it to these others that are listed. This number doesn't have anything to do with our 10,500. We would have to find out what their payload is, which is going to be different. So we don't know that until we see that number, what that payload is, to know what those weights are of those trucks. And then we do know that some of these others, like the Silverado, for example, we don't know what those curb weights are. So we don't have some comparison going on here to know how much each one of these trucks weighs in their gross vehicle weight. So I think if we knew that, if we just had something that showed us that, what trucks are in this classification of, I can't remember what it was, the federal has the classification of class 3, that go over the 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. If we had that, we could compare and come up better with, in our head, what this vehicle is. And we don't have a weigh station or something to go and weigh each one of these and see if they're carrying more of a load or less of a load. And so it doesn't really matter. We have to have that standard that Mr. Garitano or Mr. I can't remember who said it, but that we can't determine what the weight is of that vehicle. It might have a whole load of rocks and be way overweight, but we have to go by that standard. And we are not in the policing business. So I think that we're putting an undue hardship on the staff by asking them to make these determinations by the way a vehicle looks. If we just have some basic things that we follow, this is the weight, this is maybe the size, the length, width, and height, and leave it at that.
Councilmember Garantano?
Yeah, I did one comment, and this is related to this real situation I'm dealing with, is that the homeowners association in this particular neighborhood does have in their indentures a prohibition on commercial vehicles, but the officers of the homeowners association are failing to act on enforcing it. So if we can't expect the HOAs to be enforcing it, and the residents are relying on the city to be the backup to be able to handle it. And so I don't know that that's going to be a solution for us to kind of kick it to HOAs. Some HOAs have those rules and some do not. I wonder if maybe it's just a certain criteria that gets checked off to determine whether or not there is a violation. If first, from a kind of marking aspect of it, right? There's different types of markings. I will. You may have just a van, a pickup truck. It could even be a bus, but it's the marking. Commercial markings could be just a subtle name of an organization on a door versus a full body wrap that has a lot of I guess bright colors that stands out. So maybe there's a criteria that says, is the marking limited to just a door or a certain area of the vehicle versus a full another component maybe that's looked at is, again, just easy to be able to check off the box. Does this vehicle meet certain weight class or certain type of size that gets to the point where we're like, okay, this is, you know, this would now be factored into determining whether it's for commercial reasons. Because again, you may have someone, and there are residents that I can think of now that have, they might be into some big trucks or something like that. But if it's for their personal use and they do not have any kind of marketing, it's not fair to label it as a commercial vehicle when it's not. So we need to do that. It sounds like we cannot rely on the state to classify what the state classifies as a commercial vehicle. Because if Gary said, people just choose whichever route, I guess, is more economically feasible, did I understand that correct, Gary? Then, we're going to have people that fall through the cracks and just choose whatever works best for them. And in fact, it may look and smell like a commercial vehicle, but it's not registered as a commercial vehicle. I wonder if that's the case in other states. I thought in some states, if you had any type of marketing on it, commercial type of marketing, it's a commercial vehicle, and commercial vehicles are prohibited from being parked in certain places. So we may need to look at this a little bit more. I don't know if we'll be able to solve this, but I'm assuming, Joe, you're probably going to need some direction on this. And of course, I think there's a motion on the floor. So, we vote to proceed with the way it is, then obviously that's one thing. Or if not, then we would have to, vote on that motion or be taken back and try to continue to work on this a little bit more. I know a lot of work's been going into this already, but that's what I think.
Well, Mr. Garitano, with the permission of the chair, after all the comments are made, I'm going to respectfully request a postponement. I think the idea of the matrix with apples to apples and oranges to oranges is a good approach. And also, I'm going to break down the definition in the zoning ordinance to bulleted points so you can see all aspects of it. There are some other things in there that address what constitutes a commercial vehicle beyond weight. It could be a trailer attached to it, which has lawn maintenance equipment associated with it, that kind of situation. But I do want to hear all the comments before I ask the chair to request a motion for a postponement. Thank you.
Katie?
Joe just brought up what I was going to ask. Is there any way that we can take the conversation today and further crystallize it? And I also was concerned about the trailers and other things that are attached. We definitely want to not have those placed on streets unless they are doing specific construction at a specific site for a period of time. Obviously, we need to let those trailers sit and be able to be used by the men and women who are working on homes and properties of our residents. But I'm fine with moving it back to Joe to take all of the information that they did a good job of gathering and be able to summarize it in something that's easy for our residents to read, easy for the council to read, and we can make it also easy for staff when they're called to intercede with something, to be able to talk with a resident and or home owners, trustees, and make it a little bit simpler for them so that it's more black and white instead of some of the gray we have right now.
Rob?
Yeah, I commend the effort. Gross vehicle weight rating, I think, is a reasonable approach in my view, because this is supposed to be citywide, as I understand it, and that means the folks out here that have a great love for Ford F-350 dually 4x4s that are pushing the limit of that, could in some cases, if they have a particularly, you know, garish paint job on it, be in violation of the of this, you know, if we go down the, I think we go down the path of, you know, judging based on appearance, there's going to be some unhappy folks potentially, because there can be a subtle commercial vehicle and there can be a quite garish personal vehicle. I think what we're trying to do, based on listening to Council Member Garitano, is eliminate the vans and the box trucks and those kinds of things. And I think the gross vehicle weight rating does all of that. And so now we're left with the aesthetic question. And I don't know how we can regulate vehicle aesthetics. Some people like, you know, loud paint jobs on their trucks. I know, you know, one person in particular that has a personal truck. It's a really big one. It's shades of pink and purple, and it's a big old dually, and it probably would barely make it under the ordinance, but it's still a garish truck that people would object to. So it seems to me if they're blocking the walk, we've got an ordinance to cover that. If they're parking on the street, we've got an ordinance to cover that. And if they're trying to drive a big old box truck that has advertising on it, they're probably over the gross vehicle weight rating that we've established. Same, you know, and I think most of the folks that have, you know, F-350s and so forth, it's just their personal vehicle, or they drive it back and forth to work. And I'm not sure we can tell people, hey, you can't use this, you can't park this truck in your driveway just because it has a logo on it. I mean, I'm really opposed to that. So that's my spiel. It sounds like we're going back to the well, but I say don't discount or don't completely disregard the or discard the gross vehicle weight rating, because it's real simple. The manufacturer states it. You can look it up in real time. The police officer, whomever goes to answer the complaint, can say, okay, well, this vehicle is rated for 14,000 pounds, and you're over the limit, so you can't park your truck here. It seems pretty black and white to me. So that's my spiel.
Any other comments? We do have a motion on the floor, so we can do this one or two ways. We can go ahead and call the motion and have a vote, or the maker and the second can pull back their motion in their second.
It sounds like Ms. Dodwell already did, and I'm happy to have Joe take another look at it, because I think we can do better. I was just throwing out some cautions. I don't think we can legislate aesthetics on people's vehicles. Myself.
And I concur. I concur with that. So I'll pull back my second. Let's just make sure that we put together some specific guidelines that our residents can follow, and our safety regulation people and the cops can follow quite easily. Okay?
Is that a motion?
No, that's just me agreeing as a second on the original motion to move it forward, that we do not move the motion forward. We table it for now. We bring it back to the next meeting once we have the document that we can share with residents, with our cops, with our code enforcement, with we council members, to do a final review on and make sure we have the information in a very quick and easy review form for all of those parties to be able to come to agreement on.
Joe, do you need a motion from us, or are you satisfied with the comment?
Madam Chair, if I may offer a suggestion, a motion to postpone is a primary motion and would supersede the motion that's on the floor at this time. So the department would respectfully request a motion and second and voice vote on just to postpone to the next meeting. Thank you.
I'll make said motion. I'll make said motion to postpone.
Teresa, are you seconding the motion?
Yes, sorry, I was signing yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion to postpone passes.
Thank you all.
The next item under action items is the installation of lighting along certain trail segments, all wards.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. As is referenced in the memorandum the Department of Planning prepared for your consideration tonight, this particular item was discussed back in March of this year. At that meeting in March, the Department of Planning presented information about a previous attempt to add trail lighting in town center along one of our corridors. What we found at that time, which was part of the Great Streets Manchester Road effort, that trail lighting would be aesthetically pleasing and certainly add a safety and visibility aspect to the trail, but was also very expensive and would require a substantial amount of work to run electricity if solar energy systems was not feasible. Ultimately, with the Great Streets project that involved Manchester Road, or in our case, State Route 100, the trail lighting component was dropped because of cost to manage the budget better. Ms. McCutcheon, the chair of this committee, has received several comments from residents about potentially reconsidering this. And as we talked it through in March, again, the cost component, particularly on the cusp of the pandemic, made everyone a little leery. Tonight, what the department I want to suggest for consideration, instead of trying to light a long segment of our trail, maybe look at potentially lighting one of our pedestrian bridges and the plaza areas on either end of it, just to see how the reaction is amongst the community. And certainly it serves the purpose of obviously adding visibility to the area. It is obviously an improvement in safety. And from the department's perspective, certainly would add an aesthetic and make it kind of a landmark on Route 100 and a signature that you've arrived at Wildwood. When we built the second pedestrian bridge, we did have lighting as a component of it. Again, because of cost constraints, the lighting component was removed. And so what the department is proposing tonight is maybe a baby step versus a long run along the trail, and do something that, for the most part, could give us an example to build from or a template, depending on the comments we get from residents. If we're successful in lighting one of the pedestrian bridges, then we can work from there. The first step in this would be to engage a lighting consultant just to get some ideas of what would be the least expensive way to get the most bang for our taxpayer dollar. And that is what the department is suggesting tonight, to authorize it to have some preliminary conversations with the city's lighting consultant on maybe lighting one of the two pedestrian bridges or one of the tunnel areas, get some information on how it might be done, an estimate of cost, and then bring that back to committee so they can kind of gauge if this is something we should consider in 2021. And if so, then we can make it part of our budget discussions as we begin this fall. Madam Chair, the department's available for any comments or questions, and thank you again.
Mr. Garantano?
I'm gonna just let Rob go ahead in front of me. I saw his hand up before I put mine up, so then I'll go after Rob.
I'm not sure how you can see that because I never see it.
Click on the participant button.
Yeah.
And there you will see everyone listed there.
Oh,
and
there I do now. Oh, the participant. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Little school, and I'm just generally awkward on Zoom and in real life too. So anyway, Joe, I'm completely confident in your consideration of the safety issues, the aesthetics, and the energy efficiency. And I think you're on board with night sky compliance to the extent possible. There are folks who have spoken to me, constituents have spoken to me about how wonderful it is, certain places at their winter home in Arizona, as one silly example, because they have strong night sky compliance ordinances, and it reduces the light pollution and so forth. And so this is it's hard to thread that needle, particularly if you're lighting a bridge that goes across the highway. But I'm trying to spell out criteria for the consultant, because the consultant, if we give them guidance, they'll come back with what we want. If we don't give them guidance, it might be a little bit brighter, than what we're looking for. But I think if you go to Paris, 5 minutes out of the hour, the Eiffel Tower is flashing beautiful gold, and it's spectacular. And I don't think we need to do anything quite so spectacular, but we can make this a real feature, as you suggest, and something that says Wildwood to people, and it probably wind up in pictures that we distribute in our evangelism brochures and so on and so forth. It could be a feature that sort of defines Wildwood if we do it right. So I'm totally on board with this. I just wanted to put those bullet points out there, and I support it.
Mr. Garantano?
Yeah, well, I am happy to see this come back again. I remember when we were discussing the pedestrian bridge, and the original proposal for that bridge included the lighting. I thought that would be a nice addition to that bridge, and eventually we would hopefully roll it out to the existing pedestrian bridge. I think the idea of testing it out is probably a good one. We've got some dark spots on some of these trails. I specifically will tell you, when I'm out, there is a stretch from the long Route 100 west of Taylor Road, west of the Anthology, all the way up to the new pedestrian bridge. It's quite a dark area there. It's very wooded. Probably be helpful to get a little bit of lighting, maybe in some spots, certainly around the pedestrian bridges or high traffic areas are areas we should consider. And then from the aesthetic perspective, Rob, I do agree that with the way lighting exists today, you could still be dark sky compliant. Yet at the same time, I really believe that lighting enhances the beauty of certain key landmarks. I don't know how fancy we'll get with the lighting, but with the LED lighting, you have lighting that can change colors. It just can enhance the bridge. Even if you were to drive it, you can see it along 100 as you're driving along. So I love the idea as a way to see how feasible this is if we want to expand the rollout. And certainly if we could accommodate the costs to be able to do that, just makes it even better. So I'm in support of that.
Any other comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought I had my hand up. Maybe I didn't. I just wanted to ensure that Joe does what he's probably intending to do anyway, and stresses solar powered lighting if possible, particularly on the trails where Joe was talking about. We can make safe lighting without spending any energy if we spend a little bit more on the front end. And I think that's probably already a criterion, but I just wanted to mention. That's it.
Katie?
I just wanted to make sure that we do minimize the amount of light pollution along that particular stretch between 100 and 109 there. There are residents that have homes along both of those corridors, and they didn't move here to have heavy duty lighting in those areas. So we want to make sure that it is minimal lighting that provides path identification, but does not damage the aesthetic of the night sky or the aesthetic of the surroundings in the area. While I want to make sure that we have paths that people can walk, they're also available during light hours as well. And so I don't know that we want to spend too much money on lighting pathways when somebody could get a headlamp or another mode of lighting their way personally. So that's just my perspective. I want to make sure that we minimize any light pollution that we have here. Having been out here for 27 years, it's unfortunate that I've seen the amount of pollution that has occurred in the town center area. Obviously, it bleeds into where I'm at in the city, and I just want to make sure that we keep it at a minimum.
Teresa?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's being said. The keeping the light at a minimal amount that comes out into so it isn't invading into other people's space is a good idea. And that the it can look very beautiful also in certain areas. I think it's a fine line in making it look like a carnival light compared to just a beautiful light too, though, that we have to, and I know that the staff will be very careful with that, because I've seen in other countries, you know, like these flashing colored lights, and it just looks like a carnival. But I think that would be very beautiful. I just want to ask, I think I know the answer, but this is not something that's coming out of this year's budget, right? Because we're over budget already, right?
Yes, any installation, or let's say moving to step 2, would be in 2021. The department has, as part of its planning operating revenue budget, consultant services. And I'm thinking at the very most, this is maybe $2,000 to $2,500 just to do this exploration and maybe get some ideas on appropriate types of lighting sources, LEDs, but just more so their illumination levels and what we can do with them. And then just understanding some of the other components that have been described here. Solar energy versus electrical power, shielded, fully shielded lighting sources versus partially or non-shielded, things along those lines. So any of the major expenditures would have to wait till 2021 at the earliest.
Joe?
Yeah, I think that I do believe Joe and the rest of the staff will look at different options. So I know that they're not going to create the carnival type of atmosphere. It's not who we are as Wildwood, but just seeing the work that they've done already. If you notice in the back parking lot of City Hall, that's LED lighting, and it's kind of downward lighting. I believe, yeah, it's LED lighting in the back parking lot. Yep. And then our street lights in most of town center, those are the orange kind of sodium type of gas bulb. But you'll notice that in the newer area along the Main Street crossing neighborhood, and I think even in front of City Hall, there's still two street lights right in front of City Hall that use the new LED. And I think our contractors let us test out stuff like that to be able to see, do we want to make the switch to LED? And then, of course, you know that there's different types of color with LED. You can kind of get that daylight, or you can kind of go more a little bit yellow, warmer light. So I feel the best way we're going to figure this out is by testing out some options. And being that this is solar powered, I'm not too worried that we're going to probably create enough light to create a distraction, because solar powered is limited to what the batteries can be able to store, and then also how long you want them to carry on through the night. But I think we've got an opportunity to really enhance even just some key areas where we could, lighting will create a safer atmosphere for some people. They'll feel more comfortable. And then certain parts, we already have existing lights with the street lights, so we don't have to do that. But there are some areas that are completely dark at this time. And it probably would help to just have a little bit of light over there to help folks stay on the trail uh, or if they're running or walking.
Rob, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Just a real quick question for Joe, actually. How does this, it's mostly for my future reference. How do you normally proceed with something like this? The dollars seemed relatively trivial in the grand scheme of things. Do you say, hey, we want you to look at a night sky compliant design that is aesthetically pleasing, or maybe even aesthetically makes a statement, and safety is a concern and energy efficiency, and then, hey, they come back with some designs, or you just call them and say, hey, we want to light our bridge, give us a design that's that meets this price point? Which way do you go with that?
A combination of both. We'll give them some working parameters that we feel strongly are important to Wildwood, many of which you've identified tonight. And we'll also give them an idea we don't want to spend over this. So
Okay.
it's a off.
I'd like to make a motion, if we need to, that Joe go ahead and go through this process, and that the $2,000 that he has the ability to spend within his operating budget gets utilized for this.
I see a second by Rob.
Yes.
And before you take the vote, I would appreciate if it includes lighting the tunnels. If you can get a quote on that, because I've heard a lot of concern. People are out walking, and then it may not be dark when they begin their walk, but then they get to a tunnel area and it is quite dark. And I also know that the tunnels get a lot of graffiti in them as well.
Can I get the tunnel at 109 is already lit.
Is it?
Yeah, there's lighting underneath there.
I
don't know if the tunnel at 109 by Pond Grove Illusion.
I don't think it is.
But the new one has lighting.
Yeah, the one by Pond Grove Loop, I've been told does not have, and they are concerned walking through there. So
okay.
I don't know if we have it and it wasn't working at the particular time. No, do we have lighting there?
It does work. There is lighted at Pond Grove Loop.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you all.
Our next order of business is park matter. And the first item is discussion of a nighttime winter market. Ward 8.
Madam
Joe?
Chair, I'm going to let Ms. Arnett take this one, and we'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I also will note, as we get into this, Economic Development Manager Julian Jacquin is on the call as well. And the internal meeting that staff held included Joe, myself, Travis, who's also on the call, and Gary. Travis and Gary are our main, two of our main contacts to the farmers market. So logistical questions relative to that, they'll be able to answer. So as y'all are aware, we have a farmers market. This is our 12th year. It's run every Saturday morning from late May to early October. And it has been very successful in the last few years. When a number of area farmers markets have been closing, ours has seen a resurge and quite a boost in the last couple of years. We use an independent contractor to run that. Her name is Natalie McAvoy. She's the sweetest lady and has just done a fabulous job with the market in the last couple of years. So we were approached by a resident, and some of our best ideas, as we will tell you, come from our residents. And this one had traveled internationally and around the US and has participated in and attended a number of night markets. And she just believed that it would be a great success if Wildwood started one of those. So she reached out to a former council person, and then it kind of got passed to staff. So staff discussed the logistics. We believe that we could potentially host a nighttime market or a winter market. I'll butcher the German, but there's a Christkindl market is very popular internationally and around the country, and wintertime holiday markets. We basically have the infrastructure already. We have all the tables, we have tents, we have many of the things that would be startup costs. So that would be minimized if we chose to try and pursue something. The discussion among staff was that the town center would be a great hub, that if it was run in a similar fashion to utilizing a contractor to manage the market, we thought that it was a very feasible concept. And so we discussed a number of different ideas, but we really wanted to start with you all, see if you had an interest and if you thought that a nighttime market, whether we start once a month or once a season or however we want to logistically begin, and probably start small and work up to what we can attain and achieve. And then, so if you all were supportive, we could start fleshing out some of the logistics. So if anyone, staff, did I miss anything on our discussion that you want to throw in there?
Madam Chair, there was a couple of things that I thought were important enough to ask Mr. Jacquin to kind of sit through another meeting from home. But in the past, we've had some concerns from the brick and mortar businesses about offering things on the street. And I wanted to make sure that Julian knew of this. He participated in that pre-meeting. And then secondly, as our economic development manager, I feel he has the best pulse of the community. And so that's why I've asked him to attend tonight, and he was gracious enough to do so. So I'd like to give him an opportunity to maybe just make some comments about this, and then kind of go from there. As Kathy said, with all of your feedback, if it's something you like, we'll certainly explore it. If not, we'll be glad to let the resident know that it's just not the right time.
Thanks, Joe. So I think this is definitely something that we can support. I think we've seen successfully in the past, especially last year, when the Wildwood Business Association, the WBA, for an example, has kind of picked up in their programming and added new special activities with whether it's a food truck festival or the Halloween Wild Walk, or more specific to this topic, the Winter Festival with tree lighting back in December, that there is an appetite for evening-based activities that engage the community, but also engage the business owners and allow for businesses to set up tents, have some vendors, and really allow the business community to interact directly with the residents. I think that's been received very favorably. So from that perspective, I think there is an appetite for it. It's just how do we want to best approach it? When this idea was first forwarded to us originally, I think my first comment was definitely make sure that it's that we engage the current manager of the farmers market with Natalie, because this is a variation or version of a farmers market, definitely making sure that our current management is involved in that discussion. The other piece being is, as Kathy mentioned, is this a once a month? Is this a once a season? Is there an option to shift one of the existing farmers markets each month or each season into an evening activity? Or is this more of a winter fair where we combine it with the WBA's already existing Winterfest? So as Joe said, you know, there's definite interest and opportunity there to engage the business owners. It's just really seeing what you all would like to do, and then we can re-engage the businesses from there.
Mr. Garantano?
Yeah, I'm really happy this is back on the agenda. So last December, we had our first Wildwood Winter Fest by the Wildwood Business Association, and then in partnership with the city. And it was our first one ever, and it was by far, it was like a Hallmark card moment, because we had Christmas carolers, we had a tree lighting, we even had a Santa Claus who was there taking photos with the kids, and we even had some tents set up for some of the businesses. And I think probably if we had had more time planning it ahead, and an event that's been occurring for a few years, it would have been even bigger. And so I would suggest we definitely support doing something like this from a holiday perspective, building on the Winterfest, because to me it is something that brings our community together, an opportunity for businesses, both brick and mortar and those that run their businesses in Wildwood and nearby, to participate. And you really have an incredible opportunity. It's more the experience than just going there to buy things. It is the opportunity to walk around. I think that we had hot chocolate, we had bonfires set up where people were warming up. I mean, you really would have thought you were in the middle of a movie, holiday movie. So I would love it if we do consider something like that, building on the winter fest. And Julian, you do throw some good ideas, because there are farmers markets in other cities. I think Eureka does theirs at night, or at least the city nearby here. I know there's one that does their farmers market in the evening. So maybe that is something we explore for other times of the year. But at a minimum, I think Winterfest, building on that, would be a fantastic. And that market that is in Chicago, the Chris Kindle Market, they have a website. They have pictures of what their market looks like, and that's what a resident showed me too when they wanted it. They were trying to push for that idea. uh, Look at those pictures, because you'll see that atmosphere that I think would be great to replicate in our city. You think of St. Charles and how you walk around Main Street or their street there in the holidays, and they have the carolers. We could start to build something like that here in Wildwood.
Rob, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I want to second what Joe's saying about combining events, but I think we could do it more generally. We have the bands occasionally, we have this and that. And if folks could eventually assume that when they head out to town center to listen to the band or whatever, there's going to be a market there as well, and just kind of make it a part of all the other events, all the public events that we have at town center, or maybe in our new village green or what have you. I think it'd be a great thing, but I'm not sure we can. I don't know that we have the population density to support a market very often for anything other than produce. And I think the produce one works perfectly well during the mornings, but I'm happy to explore anything. I think it might, the evening one would depend on the manager to find other kinds of businesses that would be interested in selling to a night crowd, maybe more arts focused and jewelry and that kind of stuff. We have them at the day market. It might go over better in the evenings if we do it right. There are cities around the world. I agree with whoever said this, but you go to Seoul, Korea, there's Nam de Moon, and you walk around and you can get your boiled silkworms, and the whole place smells like cooking bugs and whatnot, but there's all kinds of bargains, and people are out. It's a festive atmosphere, and I would love to see it with Wildwood. I'm not sure we can get there in a hurry, but something that's more family focused, but a little bit less utilitarian than the farmers market, I think might be really great. But I support anything along these lines. I just think it's a great idea. That's my spiel.
Katie?
I would love to be able to do this year. I don't know that we will be with the current conditions of public interactions with people, but let's not put that in front of us and say we can't do this. I think if we do it in maybe November, mid-November, before the Thanksgiving weekend, and then mid-December timeframe, in an evening, that would be beautiful. And we allow our vendors from within the city of Wildwood to be able to show their wares and be able to move forward with this. That would be fantastic. I guess I just don't know if we'll be able to do it this year or not.
Tracy?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. I do think we need to be careful. We mentioned once a month. I think that's, even if it doesn't start right away, probably too much. I think it has to be, maybe once a season, once a quarter somehow to build the excitement. I think if we overdo it and people think it's always there, they're not going to make us, a special effort to put it on their calendar and come. And so, maybe start smaller as far as the number of dates and grow depending on how successful it is. I mean, and I really do want to include those businesses. I mean, it could be more like a street stroll kind of thing too, where the businesses that are there just have their doors open. They don't have to set up a separate tent or whatever. It could be like, street merchants, or then the doors to those businesses are just open and you can wander in and out, longer hours than maybe they're normally open. And then some entertainment, because I know we really missed those concerts this summer. Those are always well attended. So, just different things that pull in a different group. But I think it's a fantastic idea. And I definitely think people will come, especially right now or whenever we can start.
Teresa?
Yeah, I think Tracy has a good point there. Just like a Soho walking around and enjoying each other is such it builds camaraderie with with the people and gets us to know each other better. And yeah, I think that's a great idea. But I think this year being able to have it outside would give us a way to have something together without being in a crowded room with other people. We could get out. We could even wear our masks if we thought that was a good idea. But we can be outside and the fresh air and be with people and not be so secluded the whole winter.
Yeah, I also think it's a good idea, but I think that maybe we should start with something just festive for once a year and not something that's every month or ongoing. I liked Mr. Garantano's idea of piggybacking with the WBA's Winterfest. And if the businesses could stay open a little bit later, then you could even do, Christmas carols from business to business, and then maybe people would see what's there and what's open. So I would think that one more festive event rather than an ongoing monthly event. Teresa?
Yeah, just you made me think about that if we decided to do it and just said, okay, we're going to do it every year or every 3 months or whatever, we might bite off more than we can choose. Can we just do like a trial one time and see how it goes?
Mr. Garantano?
Yeah, I think, and what you mentioned, by the way, that's just not my idea. I mean, there's a lot of people I know, Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Edens, a lot of people were passionate about the winter event, and you've all mentioned some great things. Do you know that in the wintertime, we have several local businesses right here in the town center, Pure by Jen, Heels, Milk and Honey, just to name a few. They get together and they do some kind of event where they kind of organize, where it's kind of like you kind of visit stores one after the other, and they have tea lights outside, and I think there's like you stop in and you have some wine and some cheese and you do some shopping. What's that?
We do horse and carriages as well.
The horse and carriage ride in the December time frame by Milk and Honey. It's beautiful. I mean, we have the opportunity to really focus on it and expand it. And, I can really throw some ideas out because we've got a lot of businesses too on Manchester Road that are not connected. But if you had a focused event that was, let's say it was a certain weekend in December, where we're just going to say, it's holiday nights in Wildwood or Winterfest. And, maybe you have a little trolley that just drives around to get to the other businesses so people can hop on, hop off. You don't have to park, and it's easier. People can have a drink or something like that. There's just so many opportunities, but it all comes down to really how much, right, we can spend and how much we can put into it. But I think what you're all saying, what I've heard is if we can focus on that one event and get it ready, I think it would be good. And let's not dismiss that there are other opportunities. In October, the Wildwood Business Association did last year. I forgot what they called it, Julian. It was kind of like a Halloween type of thing. It was like a walkabout, walk around Hollywood, Wildwood, or something like that.
Wild Walk.
Wild Walk, the Wild Walk. Incredible turnout. It was in the evening. It was like 5 p.m. I think it started, and they had the area next to the B&B Theater, lots of tents around there, and it was again local businesses that made this happen. They had their tent, and they would give away things to the kids, the trick-or-treaters. But you wouldn't believe the line on Main Street was from where basically the B&B Theater is to the corner almost of Taylor Road. I mean, they were lined up just to get in there and walk around these tents and stop by. And there was like a photo booth by Higher Focus Photography. They were giving away hot dogs, the business association. So there's a lot of opportunity even in other times of the year. But I think Katie's right. We don't know yet what COVID is, but let's be optimistic and hope that maybe we're going to get through the worst of it. And maybe we just focus on trying to make this a good one this December, because if we're going to do something, it needs to be outdoors, probably for the safety perspective. In a lot of cities right now, they're encouraging outdoor dining. You know, they prefer people to be outside. So if there's going to be something, this is probably it. But that's it. I've spoken enough about it. I think there's enough. Joe, do you need a motion? Is this a motion to proceed with something like this? I'm happy to make it.
I think Rob had his hand up. Rob, do you want to?
No, ma'am. Actually, it was Julian. I would continue the discussion, but we've got other things to take care of, and I think we've come to a consensus. Everybody loves it, so thanks.
So we do need a motion.
Yes, ma'am. With your permission, the department would respectfully request a motion to kind of start the exploration of this with the thought that maybe we can do something or complement the Winterfest, depending on COVID-19.
I think this would be a really good year to expand the Winterfest too, because we haven't done anything to celebrate our 25th anniversary this year. And maybe we could tie that in if we're able to pull it off. So do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion on that.
I'll second.
Dan seconded the motion.
Oh, okay.
You too. Sorry, Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Another item of business under Parks Matter is the contest for the naming of the Community Park Ward 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For some of the Planning and Parks Committee members, this may seem familiar. We had talked about holding a contest to name Community Park within the overall Wildwood community. The thought is to try to initiate this right around the time the pandemic started and the county executive issued the first of the stay-at-home orders. All of that kind of created an impediment, and we haven't made much progress. But now we feel we can, as staff, conclude the wishes of the committee and begin that naming contest out in the Wildwood community. We wanted to mirror what we did with the Ward 5 Park, now Green Pines Park. We found that bringing the community into the process created a lot of names we would have never thought of for the park. We were able to engage the school-age children in many of the schools around there. And then finally, we got a great response, over 400. And so 400 responded. So we would like to proceed forward under that fashion. And what we're seeking tonight is just the committee authorizing us to begin that process as it did back in March. Thank you.
This is Katie. I'll make a motion to do so.
I hear a second. Rob, second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Our next item of business is an update on the virtual recreation programs and events.
You've got one before that.
I do? We did the, oh,
Discussion of
the
reopening park
reopening of the
facilities.
park facilities. Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms.
No
Stavro.
problem.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, as you know, the Department of Planning and Parks, under the direction of this committee and City Council, has reopened most of the city's park facilities over the course of the last couple of months. A couple of items that have remained closed are the permanent restroom facilities and the playgrounds. There's kind of been a mixed bag relative to how other cities have handled those two. And for the most part, the city of Wildwood has followed the direction of the St. Louis County Department of Public Health and the St. Louis County Department of Parks and Recreation. To date, the Department of Public Health and the Department of Parks and Recreation, both at St. Louis County, have continued to keep playgrounds closed due to concerns about sanitization and just the social gathering aspect. Also, the department, with the support of City Council, has kept the permanent restroom facilities closed. What we found is the recommended sanitization process and the number of times per year would be very costly, and we were concerned about the revenues necessary to meet that demand. Whereas we have replaced the permanent facilities with portable restrooms, and they're much easier to clean, much quicker, and we have them already on a regular schedule in many locations where they currently exist and where we've added. So for now, the department is respectfully requesting that we continue forward, but we would like the option to consider for Labor Day weekend potentially opening up the playgrounds if the Department of Public Health considers it reasonable to proceed. Thank you.
Comments? Katie?
I would like to make a motion that the committee approve moving forward, if the county allows us to move forward with opening the playgrounds. I'd say let's leave the restroom facilities for a September meeting and we can do an assessment at that time. But if we can open playgrounds for our kids sooner rather than later, that would be a big benefit to the parents. I hear a lot of requests for that. So I'm moving forward that we provide the ability for the department to make that decision based upon what the county is recommending. And we can get that done by Labor Day because our next meeting won't be before Labor Day.
Teresa, are you seconding?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we're on the update on the virtual recreation programs.
Madam Chair, I'm going to pass the baton to Ms. Arnett.
And I will note that Dr. Remy is in the attendee panel and put his hand up. So if you want his
I'm sorry.
input on that, that's okay. I don't think you get. He's not in the panelist, but he I think he wanted to offer some insight. If you'd like to.
Yes.
Dr.
Lee, would you like to make a comment?
Let me go ahead and add him as a panelist, so he doesn't feel unwanted.
No, I made a mistake. I hit the wrong button.
Well, then I'll put you back at the attendee panel. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, relative to virtual events, much of the memo, I won't belabor all of the items that we have completed, but I will note there's kind of 4 ongoing events. The first is senior yoga, which is still being held virtually, but twice a week with Wildwood Yoga, and it has been very popular and we've seen great success with that. So that is unchanged and ongoing. We're still doing our virtual bingos and trivia nights. It's a shame Councilmember Bartoni's not here. He did trivia last time and he answered the question correctly on stormwater. So I was pretty proud of him. So But we do have bingo again next week, and we've got some new prizes that are 25th anniversary swag. So if anyone wants to participate in that, it is next Wednesday evening. And then we're still planning more trivias and bingos. Those are very popular. Our new event coming up starts on September 1st, and we're having a virtual pet talent contest. So if you have a dog or a cat or a whatever that can do amazing tricks, we're gonna, for a week, people can submit videos, and then we're gonna have a vote of the public, and department staff is also going to pipe in our 2 cents on that. And those we're gonna be giving away some dog park memberships and some other swag items as well. We've also started, it's not in the memo, but I did want to note we've started yoga in the park. It came to a quick pause because we had a bit of a potential COVID exposure, which turned out to be nothing, but we did cancel 4 of the classes just as a precaution. That will start up again next week. It's been very popular. Many of the classes already have exceeded, we have people on the wait list, they've exceeded the maximum. So moving forward with virtual events. And I will add just one item. Several of our staff members attended a webinar on virtual events. This was by someone who owns a private event planning company in the Kansas City area. And they did a nationwide webinar on how to switch your programming to virtual, programming ideas and everything else. Well, the first thing out of the gates was bingo, trivia. It was everything that we've already done, and their numbers that he was very, very proud of were much smaller than our enrollments. So I just thought we'd give everyone who's supporting these events a little pat on the back. It seems that we're doing well. So we'll continue pushing forward with different ideas and different events. So if there's any suggestions, we're open to hearing them, and would love any feedback as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you to staff for doing the virtual events, for getting a lot of good feedback on that. And it's fun, and it keeps the residents engaged in the community. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. It's amazing what you guys can come up with.
The next item on the agenda is the update report on facility reservations and event registration. We'll just go ahead and leave that as information items unless somebody has a question. Seeing no question, then we will move into our executive session.
So,
Joe?
Madam Chair, we'll need a motion and a second and a roll call vote to go into closed session under RSMO 610.02 paren 2 1994 lease purchase and or sale of real estate.
Do I hear a motion? Dan moves that we go ahead and go into closed session. Do I hear a second? And Tracy seconds that motion. All those in favor?
We need a roll call, ma'am.
Oh, we're doing a roll call vote, correct? Gary?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Barton, Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
and Chair McCutcheon.
Yes.
Kathy, would you turn off the recording,
Yep.
please?